Can you all hear me?
Yep, perfect.
Awesome. Hi, my name is Emmanuel. I am a software engineer, currently based in New York. So I read about Dagger some time ago, and I wanted to build a POC leveraging Dagger to build a multi-stage CI/CD pipeline that is triggered through a GitHub Action workflow. So with this pipeline, I'm taking my project through the development environment, staging, and production. I'm going to walk you through the what I did along and what I learned along the way, basically. So I built my pipeline using the JavaScript SDK, and at each stage I would automate the process of running a linter, a formatter, unit tests, and then creating Docker images for both my front end and my back end. For staging, instead, I would be pulling my images from my Docker Hub registry and then retagging them accordingly. So that's more or less the gist of what I was doing in a nutshell. This is more or less the design of how the pipeline looked. So to expand again, in the development stage, I am running my linter, my formatter, my unit test. Upon doing that, I'm then building and publishing my backend front end images to my Docker Hub registry. I'm using the workflow dispatcher feature on GitHub to pass down variables to indicate which environment I'm in at that point in time. So I'm passing down dev from the development environment, and then I'm manually passing down staging once I pass the staging phase to staging. And then at that point, I'm triggering the Dagger engine to carry out to carry out different functions to kind of like pull my images from my Docker registry and then retag them. And the same thing with production. So I'm going to walk you through a bit more of what I encountered and what I did along the way. Um, I guess what I learned after building the pipeline is that you could actually add multiple environments to a container using the with in env variables. But what I did was I was just manually passing down those variables from my GitHub action workflow essentially. Moving on to the actual steps that I carried out, or issues that I encountered. So to be able to publish my image, I had to authenticate to my Docker registry. I found that you could use the with exec command to basically encapsulate your shell commands to log in and publish your image, or with registry authenticate, with registry auth method, one of the two. I had an issue personally using both of these. So I found that when I was logging in locally, I could log in locally and publish my images locally. But when I pushed my code to my repo, for some reason I encountered an error. I'm going to share this slide with that quickly. It should be here. So I was encountering a GraphQL error that I guess something went wrong with the servicing request. Didn't quite understand what was going on. So instead of so what I did as a workaround was I decoupled, or rather I moved away the logic to log in to my Docker registry, to my GitHub action workflow. So I logged in with my GitHub action workflow. And then upon logging in, I then triggered Dagger to publish my image to my Docker registry. That resolved the issue for me. It was a bit of a workaround in some ways. I'm going to expand a bit more about this a little later. So I'm going to go back to the slide to just keep things sequential. So I already mentioned the whole passing down string variables. And then I realized that you could use the set secret query to basically create a new secret from plain text value that I passed down from my GitHub secrets. Then you load the secret to Dagger, and you can use this in your pipeline as a variable or mounted file. You could use like with secret variable then to return a container with the credentials that pass into the environment, the env variable, sorry, the environment variable associated with the credentials. So this is just like a walk through the actual GitHub action workflow file that I had. Again, just like pretty much sums up what I already mentioned. I'm logging in using the GitHub action workflow, and then I'm triggering Dagger to actually publish or retag and republish my Docker images, depending on what stage I'm in, obviously. So another thing that I wanted to like do, so when I'm running my linter, I didn't want to fail the entire build. Instead, I wanted to write whatever errors I was encountering into a JSON file. Because I didn't see the logic just failing a build because of these linter errors, basically. So one thing I really liked about Dagger is that I figured out a way to gracefully handle the errors using like a coding logic, essentially using conditional logic. So if I encounter a particular error, instead of like just failing the entire build, I carry out whatever function I want to carry out. In this case, I was writing the errors I was encountering into JSON, and then continuing with the build after that. So I think I already mentioned the building and retagging images. So for the retagging images, I chose to use shell commands. I was more comfortable with that primarily. And I think one thing to mention is something I noticed was like a GraphQL request error that seemed to denote that something went wrong in the servicing request. So I realized that if you use the .cause method, you get more insights regarding where the error actually originates from to help you debug the process a little further. So that was pretty useful, at least for me, that is. And then another thing that I found pretty useful is being able to handle, like I already mentioned, handling conditional logic, which is very hard to do with YAML scripts. So another thing that I wanted to use this for was to when I'm running my audit to check for vulnerabilities. Again, I wanted to have conditional logic to check whether or not they are critical or a certain threshold of critical or critical vulnerability essentially. And when that happens, I would then trigger a function to send an email to the responsible party to look through that, which is me in the scenario, right? So moving on to, I think I already mentioned like actually I think I mentioned the handling conditional logic. Something else I realized that when you encounter an error with Dagger especially, it's kind of essential to understand the exit code because it kind of helps you understand what the error actually like what it's telling you essentially. So I use that to understand where the error is coming from and then carry out the function to send out an email to myself with the vulnerabilities that were discovered essentially. So that's actually the long and short of my presentation. I have a video walkthrough where I just walk through the actual build itself. I can share that on the Discord channel if you'd like. Do you have any questions so far, or is everyone happy?
I just want to say I really appreciate the real world examples, and it's some of them are painful to watch because you're working around issues in Dagger, and so it makes me want to send a bunch of messages to try and find solutions. Some of them we're working on, but yeah, it's I find it great to see like real world usage of Dagger. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
super useful.
I mean, yeah, if you could put